This is Tony Medina. I'm here with Riley Cote, former enforcer in the NHL. And we're talking brain health, concussions, CTE, CBD, and everything else that has to do with the brain. Riley, tell me, first of all, how many years did you play in the NHL? And give the viewers out there a little bit of a background on yourself.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to play 8 years of professional hockey, 4 years with the Flyers. Started off in the minor leagues and kind of worked my way up, fought my way into the NHL. And obviously, what comes along with being playing a physical sport to begin with, and then fighting in that sport. The physical toll, the injuries build up, and the residuals from concussions and getting hit in the face on a basically a daily basis, it takes its toll. So for me, I was fortunate enough to find my mental health through Mother Nature, cannabis, hemp, other natural healing mechanisms, and also removing things that from my life and from my diet that weren't promoting mental health. You know what I mean? So it was obviously an accumulation of things that promote wellness. So it's been interesting for sure.
Now tell me, after games and during your career, when you would take these hits to the head, what was going through your mind, knowing that is your way of making money, but you're doing damage, and it's long-term damage?
Yeah.
How does a player who's in the thick of his career and there's 30,000 people watching you, and you're the guy, you're the enforcer, that you're out there, and the next time that the fight's called, it's your duty to go out there and kick ass. What does that do to you on the inside?
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
It was challenging. I think when I first took on that role when I was 20 and turned pro, it was a challenge for me. So I really embraced it, and it was something I was a very competitive guy. I loved to train, but I was mindless. I was a mindless warrior. I wasn't a whole lot of thinking going into what I was doing. I was just like, work hard, eat lots, lift heavy, and fight. You know what I mean? And this like gladiator mentality. And I think, it was kind of like live by the sword, die by the sword. I don't think I would have been who I was if I was too conscious or thinking too clearly.
Right.
But I think there could have been a balance of like where I could have been more mindful about, fast forwarding when I started learning the science behind these cannabinoids, using these as neuroprotectants on the front end of competition. But back then I thought I was going to play forever, that I was invincible. I was going to fight the biggest dude every single night, and then I was going to keep living on this, this beautiful life. You know what I mean? And I think, between the anxiety, the actual head trauma itself, and just the unsustainable living, the alcohol, the party, the whole package, it catches up to you.
So tell me about after those nights, and after a good night of fights on the ice, in the hotel room, what was it like in your head?
To tell you the honest truth, it was the culture of hockey and society is alcohol. So following the game is like back then it wasn't a whole lot of emphasis on recovery. Still, it was go hard. And can you go? If you can't go, we're gonna put someone else in there. So it was kind of like, even though I was self-medicating with cannabis, there's always alcohol around. So it was always like, lean on that right away.
So
fight or not, you know what I mean? It's numb, and it's numb in a different way. I mean, you can't compare alcohol to cannabis, and it's like one's destructive, one's anti-recovery, one's recovery.
Right.
One actually has a negative impact on brain and brain health, it's depressant.
Right.
And the other one's the opposite, it's neuroprotectants, great for brain health and the whole bit. So I didn't those times I didn't really know how bad alcohol was. I didn't really know how destructive it was for my recovery and what I was doing until I retired, when I actually cut alcohol out for a full year just to get some sort of sense of what I'm supposed to feel like. My brain's supposed to feel like, you know what I mean? So there's many variables there, but certainly, being mindless it gave me the opportunity to be fearless, with no repercussions. And unfortunately, I said it was like it's unsustainable, comes to an abrupt end, and then now I'm like dealt with how do you deal with this now?
Yeah.
And that's that was like my next phase of my life.
And so you retire from the NHL. At some point, did you start going through what I personally experienced, which was driving and forgetting where you were going, or having conversations with your loved ones and forgetting you even talked to them, Or did you get that far? Did you have those kind of memory issues? Or first of all, how many concussions did you sustain in your career?
I mean,
Countless.
Yeah, countless, really, because I think now, like the definition of a concussion is any sort of head trauma, right? I mean, it's like, so obviously there's different levels of concussions and layers to it, but I mean, I've been in over 240 hockey fights, so you figure, on average, and I was an open fighter, so if I got hit in the head 5 times every fight, whatever the math is on, I mean, just say 1 concussion a fight, just to do like simple math, like. Minimum. Like so that would be like a ridiculous number.
Yeah.
But actual diagnosed, only my pro career too. Really? It was just one of those. It was kind of like, I know I got my bell rung. I know when you hear the Kong and you wake up and you're looking up and you're literally seeing stars.
Right.
Like that's a concussion. There's no question that's a concussion. But I'm like, do I go and tell my medical staff? Because I'm going to get pulled. I want to play. I mean, I don't want someone to take my job. So there was this, well, first of all, a pride thing. There was this is my career. This is my bread and butter. This is, I can't take myself out of the lineup and someone's going to insert themselves in the lineup.
Right.
And and there's a few things there, but I mean, back then there wasn't nearly the mindfulness and education on concussions or focus on brain health like there is now.
Right.
So yeah.
So speaking of that, what do you think the NHL's attitude is now towards concussions and CTE? Has it improved?
I don't think they've actually officially admitted that CTE even exists in the NHL.
Right.
I mean, I think they're in denial, and I think the CTE word and definition I think is somewhat complicated. I don't think it's one specific thing that causes it. I think it's an accumulation. I mean, the hits are one thing. I mean, yeah, obviously that's obvious. It's not good for mental health. It's not good for brain health.
Right.
But I think from my own experience is that that there's other things that affect mental health and are destructive to the brain, and they're heavy metals and alcohol. And it's like, you look at a brain of someone that's been drinking for long periods of time, and it almost mimics like the brain of a dementia patient or a Parkinson's patient or whatever, like a brain health patient, mimics a lot like a CTE brain. And I think when I hear guys talking about CTE, and they want to blame the leagues, they want to blame the one concussion they had that put them over the edge, and they don't want to be accountable for their other behaviors. And I think you have to be realistic with this conversation that, again, going back to alcohol, most of the players I play with were drinkers and heavy drinkers.
Right.
You know what I mean? Especially in the culture of hockey. I think football, probably these other sports are similar. I think it's gone away from a lot of alcohol-based stuff, but traditionally it was self-medicate with booze and then go play. And then, after you get in a fight, just go booze. And it's like, and then you're mixing in pharmaceuticals, which most of them have a negative impact on brain health. I mean, and then you get into heavy metals sitting in the brain. And again, like when you start, laying out what brain scans look like, I think we're naive to think it's just that one hit, that last hit that put him over the edge. I think substance abuse was probably ingrained in that, and all of a sudden the one punch knocked him out, and then all of a sudden he's out of the game, and now he's in an identity crisis, and now he's self-medicating with booze and self-medicating with opioids, and then there's this dark spiral because we're not living we're not using sustainable tools. And then that's when I got into cannabis and hemp and learning about these non-psychoactive cannabinoids, specifically CBD, as a neuroprotectant, like protecting the brain. I was like we've been lied to. You know what I mean? This could have been something that I could have mindfully been incorporating,
right.
and knowing the science. And I was like, well, maybe the cannabis I was using mindlessly was actually protecting my brain.
Right.
And then when I retired at the age of 28, started seeking CBD and mindfully using it to mitigate some of the residual concussions and concussion issues that I possibly could have had. And then, but then being honest with that too, is CBD is a great tool, but it's not the only tool. And then getting into other mushroom extracts, lion's mane is a food grade mushroom that promotes brain health and, connecting brain tissue and all that stuff. And then these other immunity boosters, and really kind of tying in the whole wellness thing together. And it's brain health. It's brain health is everything that you eat, everything that you put around you, and the people that you put yourself around. If you're around negative people, you know what I mean? If you're constantly stressing yourself out with first world problems and all this stuff, it's not good for mental health. And you stress yourself out, and you have anxiety through the roof. Yeah. You don't sleep, and all these things. And it's you wake up in the morning, you chase the dragon with caffeine and refined carbohydrates just to stay feeling all right. It just gets worse and worse and worse, and mental health gets worse and worse and worse. And then it's then you mix in a head injury with that, or mix, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden it's it's hard to repair because it's complicated. You know what I mean? It's everyone's looking for everyone wants the masking tape, the silver bullet. It's just going to be just give me a pill, make it go away.
Yeah. So let's take it all the way down to a youth level, the pre-head injury level.
Sure.
And let's talk kids.
Yeah.
What do you tell a parent out there who has a young hockey player, and you want that kid to have the healthiest brain possible?
Yep.
Still make it to the Frozen Four and make it to the NHL.
Sure.
How do they do it successfully and keep a healthy brain?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be honest with the conversation. I think I kind of said we've been fundamentally misled, and we've been trained to trust and just believe that everything that they're telling us and giving us is real and safe, and there's no long-term repercussions. So, for me, with my experience of my own personal story, and then learning the science of, again, going back to cannabinoids, because that's what I truly believe in is the solution, or a good portion of the solution for this, is that now we introduce non-psychoactive cannabinoids. Let's take the THC element out of it, because if you're talking about, or at least the broad spectrum one, just remove the CBD component, because that complicates it with parents and youth, right? So, as we know, with children with epilepsy, it helps brain growth, right? I mean, so we see that with MS patients, we see that with Parkinson's patients. So it's obviously got a positive impact on the brain. So we can at least make them understand it from a fundamental level of just a non-psychoactive cannabinoids to at least protect the brain on the front end of it. If they do actually sustain a concussion or a head trauma during the game, get some more CBD on the back end of it, and at least try to mitigate and minimize the long-term repercussions of that specific concussion. I think it's a huge educational component. And then really being honest with your physical body is your moneymaker. I mean, you're in the business of performance, but your brain has to be intact too, and you need to protect that. One of the two goes, you're not going to get a paycheck, and you're not going to ever get there to have the ability of ever making a paycheck. So there's a lot more mindfulness on the recovery aspect of sports training. When I played, there was no emphasis on recovery at all. It was just run your body into the ground, wake up in the morning, and if you feel sore, you feel pain, just tough it out. You know what I mean? It's now it's so taught. There's so much focus on anti-inflammatories, getting back to cannabinoids, the stress response, the anxiety, the sleep. And if you don't sleep, it's the spine of recovery. You know what I mean? And I know so many people that struggle with sleep, and then the pain's enhanced, the anxiety is enhanced, and then you're chasing the dragon again, because it's so there's a huge educational component to this. People have to change their belief system. You can't keep making the helmet thicker. Right. You know what I mean? It's eventually you're going to be walking around and skating around the ice like this. I mean, it's let's be serious. A lot of the concussions come from hitting the jaw or jarring motions from getting hit in the side when your brain shakes inside. Marv talked about it. And that's what a concussion is. So it's we have to do something from the inside out, and education. And getting outside of it, thinking about THC. I think THC is a valuable component, but people aren't there yet to understand that could be a brain tool too. But let's just start with the non-psychoactive ones and then work our way that way.
And then one last question for you, I'll let you go. Fights in hockey.
Yeah.
Continue them or get rid of them?
Well, I think you got to keep them. I'm a guy that's honest with the conversation. I think there's something very powerful about self-policing and accountability.
Right.
It makes people change behavior.
Yeah.
I know it. I lived it, because when I knew the biggest, baddest dude on the other team wasn't playing for whatever reason, that I was going to act more like King Kong, because there's no repercussions.
Right.
So it's that's why there was the self-policing to begin with. It was to keep on it, keep people honest, And I think society has lost accountability.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Some people need to be punched in the face, have the universe punch them in the face a little bit,
with
time
you
to time.
100%.
So I can't tell you how many guys that I've kept honest, and and seeing the dimension of fear. I mean, fear is a powerful thing. When you keep people accountable and you stand in someone's face and say, "You do that again, and I'm going to punch you and put the stick through your throat."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, and they know that I will actually do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That they respond in a manner where they change their behavior. And if they don't, that's what I'm going to do.
And you're keeping your teammates safe.
And exactly. So it's very powerful. And I think we've gotten away from this. Everyone's so sensitive, and let's not hurt their feelings. Or Johnny can do that, and there's no repercussions. It's like Johnny needs a smack in the face now and then. You know what I mean? And he'll change his behavior for the positive. I can guarantee that.
Right.
And you see that the behavior change when they're self-policing. So it keeps, believe it or not, the fighting kept the concussions lower. It keeps them safer.
Right.
As barbaric as it looks,
Cheap
it removes the
hits are
cheap hits. Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly it. So you got to keep the honesty and accountability.
I appreciate it.
All right, man. Thanks for the time.
Man.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll get rid of this here for you. Awesome talk.